doing the work to rewire the stories that I've always told myself that I thought were right circles back to what I said earlier of like, I have never been happier to have been proven wrong about so many of the thought patterns that I held.
ADHD Rewired, episode 405. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is a more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I am here with my unmedicated friend, podcaster, admin, alumni, extraordinaire.
That's a lot of labels, buddy.
That's a lot of labels. ADHD MJ Siemens, the host of the ADHD Diversified Podcast.
Which I'm sorry, I know it's kind of on hold, but you know, life happens.
Yeah.
And pandemic happens. And I know that if Brendan were here, he'd say we're living through a global pandemic.
Well, he's not here. So so where are we at right now, MJ? We just finished week 8 of coaching groups.
We did. I can't even believe that it's the end of week 8 and that it's December of 2021. Like, we thought 2020 was a mess. And I was really optimistic about what 2021 was going to be compared to the dumpster fire that was 2020. And I may be the only one that thinks this, but you know, I was pretty optimistic about things that would change and that we would get back to some kind of normalcy or whatever the proper word is. But at the same time, even though it was really a messy past 12, 24 months, whatever, it's just time has no meaning anymore. It feels like there have been a lot of really good things that have come out of it too. And I really wish that good things would have come for everybody. I know that hasn't been the case for everyone, but I think for me, it's, even though it's been really tough, it's been really good in its own way.
You know, as you were saying that, one of the thoughts that I was having was, I think that a lot of people in our coaching community have been really discovering more of who they are and what they need. Because I think that when you sort of spend so much time with yourself in your own environment, you kind of have to.
Uh-huh. And when I went from working 6 days a week to being temporarily laid off, not working for 3 months, that really was the first time in a long time, in probably ever. It was like, oh my God, it's so quiet. I have to sit with my own thoughts. I don't have anything to stimulate or avoid or whatever. And then it was like, I have to face what's going on in my head. And I think a part of that too, that I discovered over the last while, is that keeping busy was the crutch so that I wouldn't have to face my own shit.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, I know you did.
I just wanted to affirm you, MJ, that I saw the struggle. I saw the all the infighting in the committee, in the itty bitty shitty committee.
It was the itty bitty shitty committee. We haven't come up with a new name yet, but I wrote a letter to it. I was kind of being a little bit of a jerk to myself, really. Like, I started occupying my time when I joined the coaching groups because I wasn't working. And so much of what we talk about is pushing back on that itty bitty shitty committee. Yes, it's itty bitty shitty, but it can also be really loud. And it is there to, I guess, protect us in a way, because there are certain behaviors and patterns that we do that were safe, but not necessarily healthy. But because it was a pattern, that's what we know, and that's what we do, and that's what we repeat. Well, okay, that's what I repeated. And when I had to rethink the way that I was thinking and rethink the way that I was doing things. Man, is that ever a mind fuck? Like, it's just like, I've been operating this way for how long, and I've survived that way how long, and I can change stuff. I don't want to do that. I didn't want to do that at the time because I thought it was wrong. It's been over a year since I was in the coaching groups, and I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and I don't think I've ever been more happy to have been proven wrong.
What were you proved wrong about?
Well, that I'm not a piece of shit. And in group today, I shared with our group the way that I have treated myself and treated self-care was a direct reflection of just like not being shown respect, or like not being shown that what I feel matters, or that what I feel is valid. I think a lot of people can relate where it's like, well, you have something to do, so just do it. Doesn't matter if you're going through this or going through that. At the end of the day, you have to get stuff done. And while part of that may be true, there is, Eric, you say it to me all the time, like, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. Like, whether I realize it or not, whether anybody who has felt that same way realizes it or not, somebody is relying on you in a way that isn't necessarily that they need you to do something. It's that they care. And I don't know about you, but when I see somebody being really mean to themselves, I don't like that. And I think that's hard to apply to ourselves. Like, we're used to being mean to ourselves. I'm good at being a jackass to myself. Like, I'm sure it can be a temporary motivator, but it's not the healthiest way to be motivated.
When you first started with, you were a member of the coaching groups, do you think you realized how hard you were on yourself?
Sure didn't.
I think if I recall that one of your probably most used ego defenses was sarcasm.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly.
And I didn't even know that was a defense thing. I thought it was, I thought I was being hilarious because I thought it was funny, because self-deprecating humor can be funny, but that was like reframing what that was really hard.
I heard Brene Brown interview this week on NPR. She's coming out with a new book called Atlas of the Heart, or From the Heart to the Heart. There's an Atlas and there's a heart. I don't know which direction it's going. And she was talking about language and how we communicate emotion and feelings, and sort of the importance of having better language and more accurate, precise language to describe our feelings and our emotions. And I forget the exact sort of analogy she used, but what came to mind, it was something about like tasting something in a thing that you wouldn't normally want to have it in. I don't know if you've ever seen those things where like having someone eat chocolate pudding in a diaper. It's like, you can even know it's chocolate pudding. You could, but it's just something about that kind of makes your stomach.
Grief.
Right. So what she was saying, that wasn't her analogy, but it was similar to that. What happens in our brain there is similar to what happens to our brain when we are not being kind to ourselves and we are talking negatively about ourselves and even using sarcasm as a deflecting mechanism. So the words that we use affect how we feel.
Yeah, that's true. And it was just really interesting for me to, I wouldn't even say interesting, I would say that it sucked to like try and fight back what the sarcasm really meant, what was behind the sarcasm, like what did it really mean at the time, because sort of using that was sort of a default. And I have heard other people say this, is that, well, if I can rag on myself, then like nobody else has the chance. So that started to make sense when I put that into perspective of the way that I was behaving towards myself. And like, in general, it kind of comes across kind of dickish. Like, I don't intend to. And I've heard you say this before, is that you're funnier in your head sometimes. And when it comes out, it's like, oh man, like that didn't land right. And like, for me, sometimes I think I'm hilarious and sometimes it doesn't land right. But if I'm talking to myself in a way every day for however many years that just isn't landing well, clearly my subconscious has picked up on that.
And I think that part of the idea of rewiring the brain, we're talking about neuroplasticity. So when you have a lifetime of paving a certain pathway, it's hard to create these new pathways, because those pathways that you've paved, they're going to be there. And so the idea we have to create these new pathways and building creating new behaviors, coming up with new ways of responding, of thinking, takes time. And the feeling part is the last part that kind of catches up once we make those changes to our behavior, once we make those changes to our thoughts. And I look at behavior too is the words we use, you know, because like, especially when we're doing something new, that internal dialogue is like screaming BS because it's like, it's different, it's new, wait, this is unfamiliar, right? And it feels inauthentic.
Oh, man, it still feel like it's been over a year since I finished the coaching groups in season 21. That was last summer. And now we're going to be finishing up season 26 in a couple of weeks. That's crazy to me. You know, sometimes it hasn't felt like I've made any progress or made any growth changes or whatever, but it has been over a year. It really does take time for those behavior changes to catch up. Like, I get really great feedback and I get some shitty feedback. Both are acceptable. And I think if I would have gotten the feedback that I am used to hearing but don't like hearing, I'll reframe it as critical feedback, it's still hard to believe that the good stuff is true, even though there's clear evidence that there's a difference being made. Yep, that is,
You know, we were talking this week in group and alumni about yearly planning, and we talked about creating our bucket list. And you were sharing how many items actually on your bucket list that like you had sort of envisioned. I think you said like 5+ years from the time you wrote that, and like how many of them you've actually already accomplished.
Which again, like it's crazy to me. Like it's almost as if there's been this fast track of opportunity that at one point, you know, I had felt that I was just lucky. And I know that other people who have gone through the groups have expressed this too, of like, oh, I was just lucky. And I think a part of that is because we are so used to working so hard to try and get somewhere that when we do get something, it's like, oh, well, that happened by a stroke of luck. And I'm starting to realize now, I didn't say I did, that when something good that you're doing is recognized, people are going to want that skill. I just had thought like, I'm lucky to be here. It just sort of happened. I thought about it. Cool. By some stroke of luck, I ended up becoming a very late, not a great podcaster, but I started one. So my plan in 2022 is to get back on that train.
When you create podcasts, I think they're great. They really are. I mean, they truly are. You definitely have a gift for telling emotionally enthralling stories.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God. You know what else is a goddamn practice? Saying thank you after a goddamn compliment.
Yeah.
I feel awkward sometimes. Like before it was like, oh, you're really good at this. That's cool.
Oh, I think it'd be worse than that. You would rapid fire like all the reasons why the compliment wasn't true.
You're not supposed to remember any of that, Eric.
Which is when I'm telling you how much I've seen you grow. You know, because you're with yourself every minute of the day.
Sure am.
I'm with you, you know, an hour, a couple of times a week. And getting to sort of see that over the course of, you know, a year and a half or so. MJ, it's only been a year and a half. I do realize
feels like it's been forever.
I mean, just all the areas that you've grown in and those areas that you recognize that you're still struggling in but working. And I think right now you're kind of getting into the deeper stuff. There's, you know, and even in the last like month or two, there's been a couple attempts for you to slip and hide. But you haven't.
Oh God.
What is that?
What do you mean, what is that?
And what is that when you're hearing that? What is that response?
I'll respond after this quick break. So we'll be right back.
Do Do you know what's possible when you get to work with other ADHD brains who just get it? Check out one of our most recent episodes, episode 403, where a few members of our adult study hall community share their wins as they go on the hunt for their next job. If that kind of commitment, structure, and community is something you'd love to take part in, we'd love to have you. Almost 250 adults with ADHD have joined us at adultstudyhall.com, where all of our members can harness the power of real-time accountability in our 24/7 drop-in room that we call Adult Study Hall 24/7 or ASH 24/7. We have other facilitated sessions too. If you're a writer, you can join our Write With Me sessions led by my assistant and our amazing community manager, Barb McDonough. She says she had, I think, 14 people at our last session, and it's just going wonderfully. You have a task you've been putting off? We have task busters, so you don't have to work through those dreaded tasks alone. We also have 2 sessions where you can get help cleaning and decluttering, and workout sessions so you can add a bit more movement to your routine. And we keep adding more. When you join the Adult Study Hall membership community, you'll gain access to all of our facilitated sessions and our 24/7 drop-in room. You can even jump into our Mighty Network community and ask for tips and tricks or other suggestions on pretty much anything you're needing some extra support with. It's all free for the first week, and then only $19.99 a month after that. Whether it's that 24/7 drop-in room that you can jump in anytime, or needing a little extra guidance or structure to jumpstart or even finish your next big project. It really is a place where adults with ADHD can get together and work together, where we all can belong. Go to adultstudyhall.com to learn more about our current ASH Plus sessions. You might even spot some of the ADHD reWired podcast family hard at work in our ASH 24/7 drop-in room. I'm always there about 3:30 Central Time every Friday and throughout the week. Join us at adultstudyhall.com. We hope to see you there. And we're back.
What?
Just
see what I mean? She doesn't even let me hide. I can't even avoid the question.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of BS is that?
That's the BS of compassionate ass kicking. And that is what it is.
I know.
It's compassionate ass kicking. That's what we do in our groups. That's sort of what we want to embody in for ourselves and for each other. It's interesting. So, working with Roxy and Moira.
Awesome coaches, by the way, just saying.
Mm-hmm. What's so interesting, especially about Moira, is that there's been times where I'm like, damn, she's such a pain in the ass.
Aren't we all?
And what it is she pushes me on the stuff that is hard for me. And I've told her this, you're a pain in my ass and please keep doing it. Right? Because
Roxy sent me a message today. She was like, what did she say? Am I your favorite pain in the ass? And I was like, yes, because it's helpful.
Well, right. Because it's it comes from a good place. I think that idea of always assuming the best of intentions. Because I just think that when we can have this when we can be part of a community, part of a culture of equal parts care, compassion, love, whatever those positive feeling, words you want to throw in there.
The good feels.
Mm-hmm, with accountability, kind of holding your feet to the fire, with that we all are wanting to do better for ourselves. And it's a messy process. And when we can create this space where it's actually safe to give feedback and receive it, even it's safe to feel uncomfortable and initially maybe even slightly defensive when receiving feedback, and then be able to circle back to that feedback. I mean, I see that so much with the accountability teams. I mean, we were in a group today. One of the teams was reflecting on and sharing updates about their mastermind. Everyone on one of the teams was giving kudos to one of the members for how well they handled receiving a lot of really candid, tough feedback. And the member was also really appreciative of it.
And what a place to be. Every time that I see that kind of growth and I see people talking about the things that they don't want to talk about, but doing it is really inspiring. And it proves that those kind of conversations don't have to be violent. There's a book that I recommend a lot to people who are struggling with communication, which is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that book has really Like it really did change the way that I communicate with other people, but I also struggled with applying that book to the way that I communicate with myself. There's a difference between being like, oh, I'm just being honest, because there is something to be said about, oh, I'm just being honest, but really you're just being an asshole. And I'm being honest.
It's almost because like the that phrase. It's just like such bullshit. It's like, no offense, but like,
oh yeah,
if you got to start a sentence saying that, just don't say it.
Mm-hmm. And the way that I've seen some of the folks in the section that I'm in right now, the way that they are communicating is being like, just the way that they're saying, like, this conversation sucks for me to have, but I need to say this because I feel bad holding it in. And I trust you enough to tell you, and I trust you enough that you're not going to judge me or reprimand me or tell me I'm a piece of garbage when I tell you. And holy man, what a place to be again, right? Because how many of us we spill the milk, we clean it up, we don't say anything, because if we say something, we're gonna get yelled at. That's not a good feeling, whether it's at work or at home or in friendships or whatever. My experience has said, you're going to get your ass kicked and you're going to be told what a piece of shit you are. That hasn't happened here.
I would also think be very, very much the opposite, where people can start to actually see and realize their self-worth and that they are wonderful people and have struggles, and both can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. And like the way, okay, like somebody can tell us something really bad, like we spilled the milk. Sure, like it is up to us to tell the truth of something that happened. But on the flip side, it's also, we can't control the reactions of other people. We can't. You've said this before in group, is like, you don't have to be an asshole whisperer. And the great thing with the A teams and the groups, even in the alumni community, is that we get to practice what that communication is like and what it can look like. And I have gotten to learn how to respond to things that I don't like or that are uncomfortable, or taking a compliment, because apparently that's really goddamn difficult. But yeah, like if somebody anywhere, like it doesn't have to be here, anywhere, just says like, you're not doing a very good job of that, and I could either choose to rage about it, or I can choose to stop and think and ask like, okay, well, what's the story behind that, and what's the story behind my reaction? Ugh, it takes so much practice to take that pause, which is why talking about this over a year later is like, oh, okay, Eric, I get it. There's growth, whatever.
Someone today in group asked about like just some of the things that we talk about in group. Will they click later on? Because there's a lot of material, and I tell people each week, like, don't try to master all this. Like, do yourself a favor and focus on like one or two areas, and like get a taste of the other stuff.
Yep. And
and of course, despite saying this, people are like, but I want to master all of it, right? And so someone asked about this, like, these things maybe sink in a little bit later. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails or text messages from people who have been in the group years later, where they're sharing they just had this like light bulb moment about something that happened in group that like they weren't ready for at that time, and like now they get it.
Yeah.
Which is great. I love that. To me, that's so cool. It's so cool when that happens.
And I think that's such a huge thing to keep in mind too, is meeting ourselves where we're at. I know that in the groups that I've been with you, and I know that last season I was in a group with Roxy, is talking about meeting ourselves where we're at. There were some things in my season when I was in ARC 21 that didn't click for me, especially like the self-compassion piece. Like that didn't click for me. It's still kind of like that machine needs a little bit of oil, but like the gears are grinding, but it's turning now. The things that I've learned in the coaching groups and the things that I continue to learn in the coaching groups, like that stuff, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, our ADHD brains say, I want it yesterday.
Yesterday, right.
But the reality is that, I don't want to admit this, but it's real growth isn't about fast tracking. Like I know that there's books and stuff out there. I want to fast track this. I want to fast track that. I want to now. And when there's more things readily available to us, we want to master all of it all at once. I want to master all of it all at once because it's so readily available. And it's been a messy couple of years, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
When I think about like sort of the members of our group and the coaching community, it is a community of such diverse, courageous, brave, authentic weirdos. And I mean that
that's accurate.
In the most like
with love.
Yes, with so much. Yes, because it's like we kind of do things our own way, and it's a little bit different, and that's kind of wonderful. Like, because it always breaks my heart when I tell people that at the end of the 10 weeks of coaching, you're still going to have ADHD. And it always breaks my heart when you see that look of like real, just like devastation on someone's face when I say that. But
it's the one promise that you've made that, it's not broken.
I have not broken that promise to anybody. We all still have ADHD. And it's the idea of compassion that it comes up in a lot of different ways, that self-compassion is the way forward through everything. When we've had a life of screwing shit up so many times in so many different ways and being misunderstood and
it's the worst.
That's, at the absolute core of why I do what I do. It's to help feel understood, because feeling misunderstood, it sucks. It is the most. Here's what it is. So that when you're feeling alone, when you're surrounded by other people,
alone in a room of people,
that's the feeling of being misunderstood.
Yeah, it's the worst. like I've kind of been in the community since the coaching groups, and I was sort of, kind of like the Patreon groups. I know there were a couple of events on Facebook at the beginning of the pandemic that built up even more community. So I actually got to know a few alumni members before I did join the coaching groups. And it was that feeling of like, really? They think the way that I do? They're just as squirrely as I am? We're just as weird? Wow. Like, that's so cool, because for the most part, places that I've been, workplaces, communities, like it's typically full of neurotypical people that don't really get my quirks. And I think that could be the same for a lot of people, where we've got our own little quirks and people don't get it. Mm-hmm. And I think that if like there wasn't that group of people, this group of people that I get to hang out with every week, we just kind of get it,
when I'm like welcoming a new group of people into the community for the first time, one of the things I will always say is welcome home. I always love how watching people's sort of reactions when I say that. It's like you immediately see them like take down like 10 pounds of armor, because it's this feeling of safety. These people are just like, they're different, but they're also just like me.
It's liberating, really, when somebody finally gets it. Like I consider myself really lucky, because if anybody has, just hit the microphone.
It's my favorite thing. I don't know why I get so much joy every time you do that. It's like that, like Three Stooges, like physical
like
humor.
Slapsticky.
Yeah, it's. What were we saying? And we're going to take a quick break.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. We want to thank Xavi, and please forgive me if I just mispronounced your name, Xavi. We have Moni, Moni, and Eileen. Thank you for becoming a patron this week. I really appreciate it. Perks for becoming a patron include getting ad-free episodes of the show starting at just $5 a month. When you get it set up, you can get ad-free episodes in a separate podcast feed added to your favorite podcast player. If you're looking for extra support, members at $25 a month can join me every fourth Tuesday of the month for a group coaching call on Zoom. That's every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. But this coming month, we are actually taking it off. It is on December 28th. And I think it's time that we all get a little bit of rest. So that will continue back in January. Really, I am so thankful for all of our patrons. And no matter your contribution, I am really grateful for your support. Thanks to your support, I was actually able to get some more support. Remember that chair I wanted to replace? Well, it's sitting in a box in my office. Let's see if I tell you next week if I actually opened it and put it together. Seriously, thank you to all of our patrons, old and new. If you're not a patron, but you've been thinking about it for a while, we'd love to have you in our Patreon community. Perks start at just $5 a month, where you'll never have to hear these ads again. Unless you like them, then you can contribute $5 a month and still listen to the same podcast feed. That is fine with me. Support can start at any amount that works for you. If you're able to provide us some support as you find value in the work that we are doing. That's ADHD rewired.com/Patreon. And thank you so much. Hey, did you know you could check out all the other podcasts that we have here on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network. You'll find all of our shows, including ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb, ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens, and the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with ADHD Rewired Coach Moira Maven. And you can join us next week on the second Tuesday of the month for our live Q&A on Zoom, where you can ask us your ADHD-related questions. We do stream the live Q&A on Facebook, so follow our Facebook page to get notified about that. But to get the most out of our live Q&A and to even get more ideas from other listeners tuning in, join us on Zoom. You can register by going to ADHDrewired.com/events. It is next Tuesday, December 14th at 12:30 p.m. Central. That's at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And I know Mountain Time always gets missed, so it's 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Although I'm not sure because I don't think Arizona actually switches time zones. It really confuses me. But it's 12:30 p.m. Central Time. We really do appreciate all of our listeners and everyone who has shared and subscribed to and left ratings for our shows. And if you have not had a chance to do that yet, it would be so helpful if you could leave a rating and review for this podcast on your favorite podcast app that lets you leave ratings and reviews. It really, really, really is a big help. With the holiday season coming in and my birthday just a few weeks away, my birthday request to you, the listeners, is to leave an honest rating and review for the podcast. Discover more about all of our podcasts and RSVP for our monthly live Q&As every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern by going to ADHDrewired.com and clicking events for our live Q&A and clicking on podcast to find out about the whole podcast network. That's ADHDrewired.com. And thanks for listening. All right, so we're back.
And we don't remember what we were talking about before.
Yeah, so we're just going to go to another topic. Yep, we're just going to keep going.
ADHD.
So this coming Thursday, so like in a couple days, we're going to have our last registration event. Moira and Roxy's group are both full. I have a couple spots left in each of my sections. If you are listening to this, whether you're a new listener or you've been listening for a while, really thinking about this, joining these groups is a huge commitment. It does have the potential to be truly life-changing, but it's also not a magic bullet.
Nothing is a magic bullet. If anybody's selling you a magic bullet, it means they are really trying to sell you something.
It's interesting. When I think about it, I think people who are really, really involved in this, it's like the most fun, hard thing that they're a part of in so many ways, because it's even the hardest parts of it, I think, have this element of fun because we can totally be ourselves. But, it's
work.
Yeah, it's work, but come in with an open mind. I think that people we've seen who do sometimes struggle, it's they sort of have an idea in their head about what this group is going to be like for them. And anything that veers from that is hard for them to adapt to. So if you're able to come in with that open mind, that willingness to explore and to view different perspectives, And you want to be with a bunch of weirdos who are doing the same thing with you?
I mean, the door's open. Like, we got to invite you in first,
It's because we forgot to close it because, it's the cabinets, the drawers.
Hey.
Me too.
That's fair. Yeah, like I definitely didn't expect the work that it was going to be, and not necessarily that there was homework. You can make it work for you, which...
It's not graded. There's work to do, right?
There's definitely work to do. And what I think what I didn't expect was when I actually really sat and thought about some of the successes that I had to look back on and reflect on, the hard conversations that have come up over the last year and then some. Doing the work to rewire the stories that I've always told myself that I thought were right circles back to what I said earlier of like, I've never been happier to have been proven wrong about so many of the thought patterns that I held. They may have been true a couple years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They may be true for anybody who tells me a story that they have about me, but the evidence suggests that it's not true right now. What a weight of armor to take off, to be in a place that is safe enough to say, hey, I fucked up. I'm screwing up. I'm having a hard time. The hardest question for me to ask it's the hardest question for me to ask is, can you help me?
Yeah, we can.
Asking for help is hard. I don't know why. It's silly. It's not silly. That's the story I tell myself, that it's silly, but it's not. It's because I was willing to be coached, because I was so willing to try. I was like, at the beginning, I was so scared of failure. I was so scared of failing because I had failed time and time again. Entrepreneurs with ADHD have failed time and time again. If you're not an entrepreneur and you have ADHD, I'm sure you have failed time and time again. It's what we do with that failure and the lessons that we learn from those failures that are going to push us forward. I think if I would have stayed stuck into thinking that my mentality was right, I would not be where I am right now.
I think for those of us who are crazy enough to think that the things that are in our heart that we want to do so badly might actually be possible, even though we have no freaking clue how we're going to get there, but we take the steps anyways. Talk about adrenaline rush. You mentioned entrepreneurship. I think being coachable with a growth mindset is, you don't have to be like a quote unquote entrepreneur in the sort of traditional sense of the word, but entrepreneur is someone who's going to make something from nothing and like try something, pivot when it doesn't work. So having an entrepreneurial mindset, come into a group with that mindset and you're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're going to see who you can actually be. And I think you're going to like it.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing pretty awesome too, man.
I mean, it's thinking about for a while, kind of thinking about myself as like CEO, and it's like, it just sounds like a big, important name, but like I'm a coach and I've been really feeling more and more like a CEO as of lately. And what's great about it is that I'm not great at it. I do not know it all. And I absolutely don't do it all perfectly. I make no claims to. I don't even try to. Like, I try to do my best that I can, and that's going to be different all the time. I strive towards excellence, but that's... And
plus, being perfect would be boring, because then what would there be to learn from?
Yeah. Excellence doesn't mean perfect.
If you're listening to this, none of this is anything that you have to do by yourself. Part of the process is learning and discovering and doing the work ourselves, but that has never... In my experience, it has never meant not being able to ask for help. And it has never meant that I've had to do it alone, because I sure didn't expect it at all.
And she's not even 5 feet tall.
Hey!
Sorry, couldn't help it.
You suck.
MJ, thank you. If your growth could be measured in height, you'd be a giant.
Come join us. It's a good time. Bye.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all of the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHDrewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.